सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। Hari Om. My name is Ajay and I'll be speaking on the next two shlokas of Bhajagovindam. One strange thought. When I was putting this here, I was thinking that you guys won't be able to hear what I speak because of my heart palpitations. There was supposed to be someone going to speak, give an introduction, so I had not prepared now. I need to. So, last 2 days we saw the 16 shlokas of Bhajagovindam. I'll just give you a picture. You've seen all this Bhajagovindam text, right? Shankaracharya is here, so you can assume that he's in this walking right on the Ganga bank, 14 of his followers behind him. Obviously, there'll be other people. Bada aadmi ja raha hai. So behind him, and then he sees this old man and says, "Hey, Budde," and then tells him that poor guy finds pity at him and gives him the bare realities of this world. Bare realities of this world, like stop running after wealth, money. World is ephemeral. People will run after. People will be with you, but the moment you have disease or something, they'll just run away from you. In my lab, there is this girl who is doing a PhD. So nice girl. We were all doing project with her. Yesterday she had chicken pox. No one wants to talk to her. She's saying, I didn't have food. No one cares for me anymore. This is what happens every time. So basically, Shankaracharya was telling bare realities of this truth again and again. He has been telling. We have been listening. Same thing goes on and on. So yesterday, Gautam finished with this idea that people in spirituality do self-persecution. They don't eat, they don't say, oh, I'm very spiritual, I want to have control over food, I want to have this, that. I'm trying to control myself, maybe just for dieting sake, but whatever. So basically, they don't understand what the process is. They mix up the means and end. Today, the next shloka which we are going to see is very simple. A very simple thought. Do not confuse between means and the end. So just the same thought. If you can, please repeat after me. Kurute Ganga Sagar Gamanam Vrat Paripalanam Athva Danam Jnana Vihinaha Sarvamatena Bhajati Namukti Janma Shatena. He says, Kurte Ganga Sagar Gamanam, Ganga Sagar, Ganga, Ganges, and basically he's saying if you go do all pilgrimages, do what all we do, basic things in life, we take upvas, right? Vrats, vows we take, we give money to charity, very common here. So most people just do it not understanding what the idea is behind it. I don't know about charity, but it's a bad idea to put money in the temple in India, though, with the government controlling the money of the hundis. But people do confusing with the means and the end. Best part is Ekadashi Vrat. Everyone does Ekadashi Vrat. At least I used to do it for that aloo ka halwa and kaju. Only once in a while I used to, like my mom used to make so. So there are lots of these 16 Shukrvars for Santoshima and Shivratri, don't eat a whole day, and Janmashtami, at least you get good food that day. But so the basic thing is people don't understand the process. What I have a little bit of understanding in the sense of what I heard from Gurudev and all was every thought has the basis of every thought is energy. So if you don't put no energy in, no energy out, in the sense in no thought, so you can focus more on spiritual activities. Upvas also means that up means sitting near God, or sitting near. So it means that you focus more on things on God and all. But if you don't do these things with this basic idea behind it, or whatever understanding people have, good understanding, it is not going to give you anything. We have seen this many times. Swamiji gives this example. You put a map, maps.google.com, and you go to the destination, you're done with the destination, throw the map away. That's the means and the process. I kind of forgot a couple of things. Just give me a second. Excuse me. Yeah, then he talks about pilgrimages. And Swamiji, we always used to bug Swamiji for Kailash Yatra. Swamiji, I want to go for Kailash Yatra with you. So, going to Kailash Yatra is really good. It was a lot of fun, but people go for Amarnath Yatra. I don't know how many of you have gone for Amarnath Yatra. It's very easy to go to Amarnath Yatra. You pay 20,000 bucks from Delhi, that will take you to Amarnath by helicopter and back. Very simple. People think they have done, bahut bada kaam ho gaya zindagi ka. Is bar Shiva never came itself. So, the thing is, please do not confuse with the end, have the end in mind. He himself says, until you do not have the direct experience with the truth at the end, if you do not have, until you do not realize a snake is, a rope is a rope, and you do not understand it, there's no point chanting Hanuman Chalisa to get rid of that. If you have to have direct experience with the truth, only then you will be liberated from all these things. And these processes are meant to help you get to reach that goal. When we talk about goal, yesterday we did see a lot about goals though, but I'll just give my thought on what goal are we talking about. One of things which we see is like we are slave of our own tendencies every day. So we use this concept of car. The concept of car is used everywhere. I want a BMW is status symbol, ego boosting. People have identifications with car. I was thinking about Gita. Most people don't use chariots to go here and there, right? We use cars. So why not use, to connect to young people, why not use cars? So in the temple when you go, you have not chariots and things there, because it gives you the same picture of identification. You think the tires are moving, and you think that, and you can symbolize that with your body. Okay, I am the body, I am the tire of the car. But really, it's not the thing. You begin to understand that, I am the driver really. So, you have to realize what's your true identity is what I have the correct understanding of the goal. And these processes will help you go up to that point. And this is the firm belief of the Acharya of the shloka, which is Sri Subodha. And he's telling out of, I don't know, scolding or pity, or I don't know, I think he's scolding us. So, the next shloka is also the same thing. Everyone is telling the same thing in different words. Please do not confuse the means and the end. Please inquire more. Please. But okay. Let's look at the next one. Next one is by Sri Sureshwaracharya. We had a nice text by Sri Chidatmananji here. It was an awesome text and an awesome lesson we had that day. Suramandira taru mula nivasaha Shayya bhutala majinam vasaha Sarva parigraha bhogatyagaha Kasya sukham na karoti viragaha. Here, Sri Sureshwaracharya is asking us to visualize a state or pointing us to a state like what we have. He's saying that can you visualize a state in you that you are not think as if your things which bother you every day, your attachments to your car, attachment to your wife, attachment to wealth, attachment to this, attachment to that. If it just drops away, how will you feel? Can you just visualize that point? He's just saying, if you can feel that, that is where we are pointing to. Can you just, you can just be sitting there like peacefully like Hanuman without, there's so many things to worry about, the whole army to take care, but just very calm. So basically, we can go into more when we start inquiring why did we get into attachments in the first place. We can say, okay, we got attached to this, we got attached to this. We all know about why did we get into attachments. We think that these things will give us happiness, but they never did. But with this delusion in the mind that they will give us happiness, we got attached to these things because we got those momentary happiness because why? Oh, we got it. We don't know why, but we got it now. So here the Acharya is telling us, please think that if you can just drop them by having clarity of thought with which you deal with the world, clarity will come only when we inquire. So please start inquiring into why you are really sad, and then you will realize it's because of your attachments, your tendencies, and when they drop off, it doesn't matter whether you sleep on the floor or you wear a gunny bag or you wear Adidas or anything. I think that's it. Hari Om.
My name is Rahul Parekh. I'll be speaking on shloka number 19th and 20. Please repeat after me. Yogarato va bhogarato va Sangarato va sangavihinah Yasya brahmani ramate chittam Nandati nandati nandatyeva This stanza talks about a life of a realized person, of a Siddha Purusha. This says this, once an individual is realized, thereafter, that master can live anywhere in this world. He can live yogaratova bhogaratova. He can be in a yoga, in penance, doing puja whole morning, whole evening, throughout the night. Bhogaratova, he can be a king. Sangaratova, he can be a midst of a crowd with hundreds of people around. Sangavihinaha, he can be in a secluded place all by himself, up in the Himalayas, in the caves, where never ever anyone has been to. Means it's the choice of that master that he lives yoga ratah, he reveals in yoga, or probably by prarabdha. Because of the prarabdha, he can live the life of a king, bhogarata, or he can be in company in the midst of the crowd serving the humanity for the betterment of the humanity. This Siddha Purusha, they have a special quality. When they are with the crowd, they become the crowd. They become one with them. When they are with the children, they become children. When they are with the elder ones, they talk elderly. Sangha vihinaha. When they are in the solitude, they enjoy their solitude. As we all know about Lord Ramakrishna Paramahansa, and also Guruji of our Pujya Gurudev, Chinmayananji, the Tapovan Maharaja. They all live by themselves. No one was there with them. So why so? Because yasya brahmani ramate chittam. Brahmani, Brahma, consciousness, Supreme Lord. Ramate, they reveal chittam, their mind, intellect is constantly revealing in Brahman. So these all means of conduct, that is company, solitude, kingship, or yogarata, they all doesn't affect them. Nandati, nandati, nandatyeva. They even go to the extent of saying that Nandati enjoys, and he alone enjoys. Doesn't it confuse us all? What do you mean by he alone enjoys? Do we all not enjoy here in our life? Don't we get that kind of a question in your mind? The way I see this thing as, well, we don't know what the absolute happiness or absolute truth is, but we definitely know what the absolute sorrow is. Just take the example when the kids, they ask their parents from the childhood different things, different questions, whenever they face different challenges in life. Say when they go to school, they have exams, they have all kinds of tensions, and they say, parents, oh dad, it's a tough day for me. It was the toughest thing I ever faced in my life. Even if they are 10 years old, they'll say that. Well, parents, they definitely, on their face, they will console them. But back of their mind, they will say that, beta, abhi bahut zindagi dekhni hai, a long way to go. And they keep this repeating when you go to teenager or once you get even married. Well, I keep listening to this thing once I got married and when you have baby, and when I tell my parents, I had a long day. I mean, he really gave me tough time. So parents say, बच्चों को पालना इतना आसान नहीं है. अभी तो पूरी जिंदगी देखनी है. Well, they are not wrong. They are right from their standpoint. What they are talking about is whatever they have experienced, they are comparing it with that. They are saying that the dukkha or the so-called taklif or whatever difficulty you are facing right now is nothing. You might have to face lots of this. So why they can say that? How do they have the audacity to say that? Because they have been through that phase. Similarly here, Siddha Purusha, they can say that whatever you are enjoying right now is not the real happiness. Because they have been through this phase. And they can compare the two situations and they can say that whatever you are enjoying right now is not the happiness but the pleasure. Because that will not last long. It's a temporary. And the real happiness is one that stays with you forever. That's timeless, that's limitless. And that's what they are trying to convey here. Let's look at shloka number 20. Please repeat after me. Bhagavad Gita kinchit dita. Ganga jala lava kanika pita. Sakradapi yena murari samarcha. Kriyate tasya yamena na charcha. This stanza has both superficial meaning to it and also a deep-rooted meaning to it. If I talk in our present way of conveying it, I will say that it caters to both masses and classes. As we have in our Bollywood, when the new movie releases, every producers and directors say, my movie caters to both masses and classes. So as this one, it has a literal meaning to it if we go word by word, as we'll see. Bhagavad Gita kinchit dita. Bhagavad Gita kinchit, a little, adhita. If you learned or if you listen, a little of Bhagavad Gita. Ganga jala lava kanika pita. If you have sipped a single drop of Ganges water. Sakradapi yena murari samarcha. Sakradapi, at least one, yena murari, Lord Krishna, samarcha. If you have worshipped Lord Krishna at least once, see all the three things, at least once. He says, Kriyate tasya yamena na charcha. Yama, Lord Death. Kriyate, never does. Charcha. You will never ever have to face Lord Death. Don't we all feel a sigh of relief? Well, by God's grace, I am sure we all of us sitting here have done these three things. So, concluding, we all don't need to fear Lord Death, which is not true. Unfortunately. That's a superficial meaning to this. Let's look deep into it, what it tries to convey. Bhagavad Gita kinchit dita. Bhagavad Gita kinchit, a little, adhita. Adhita means studied, learned. The meaning of studied is something, well, we can look at this from this point. The difference between knowledge and wisdom. The knowledge becomes wisdom only when we live it. When it comes in our practice, then only the knowledge becomes wisdom. When beautifully said in Hindi language also, ज्ञान विवेक तब बनता है जब वो व्यवहार में आता है. That's what it means. So it's not only the reading of Bhagavad Gita, but to contemplate on it. It should be seen in your day-to-day activities, in your interaction with the people around. Those values should be seen in you. Then only you are fulfilling number one clause. We all come to Saket, we all have listened. I mean, at least I have tried doing this one and I always had failure. I listen to all Swamiji's, whichever satsang I listen to, and when I go back home, I try to recollect it and I say, fine, I know what topic we talked about today. This topic, okay, fine, sit. Let's try to recollect what we taught. Okay, I know everything, and then I start. Nothing comes out. It's not that I don't know. I know it. But why does not it come out? That's what is Vedanta. It's not reading, but we have to contemplate on it. a little. It says Ganga Jalalava Kanika Pita. It says Ganga Jal, Ganges water, a single drop of it. Well, you can distribute that drop in your whole family also. So what it means is it has a spiritual meaning to it. Well, if we go back to the story of Ganges, it's beautifully said in Shiva Purana how the Ganga water was being brought to earth by Sadak Bhagiratha, and that's why it is also named Bhagirathi. There is a whole story that goes behind it, but the crux is it symbolizes our spiritual scriptures. It's a symbol, it's symbolism. As the stone in the temple is not Rama, but it represents Lord Rama. As the flag of any nation is not the nation, but it represents that nation. So as Ganga, river Ganga, it's the cultural flow of spirituality. It has a spiritual significance to it, only if we live those values. Sakradapi yena murari samarcha. Sakradapi, at least one. Murari, Lord Krishna. Mura means demon, Rakshas. Murari is one who kills Mur, annihilator of, Rakshas. Mur, in a human being, Mur is his ego. So it says that Murari Samarcha. It's not Archana, it is Samarchana. It's complete Archana. Complete Archana means surrendering to the feet of Lord. What will happen? You get rid of your ego. Ego is the only one who is standing in between Lord and you, all of us. So by surrendering the ego, by killing the ego, you get close to God. What happens then? Then you become one with that supreme reality. Then you reveal in that God consciousness. You become one with it. What is it? What is God consciousness? What do you mean by becoming supreme reality? Becoming one with it. Means that supreme reality, that Param Brahma is timeless, is changeless. And you becoming one with it means you also become timeless, changeless. Things around, objects around, things being do not affect you anymore. And that's why it says here, Kriyate tasya yamena na charcha. Yama is Lord Death. And what is death? Death is change. And change only happens in this Einstein word of time. And once you become one with that timeless, that endless, how can that change affect you? What does it mean? It means that, see, we all are a part of that Brahman. We all are limitless, changeless. It's not that we have to become that changeless. It's not that we have to become a part of Brahman. We are changeless. We are timeless. We don't have to become, but we have to realize that we are changeless. There is a difference. We already are. We need to realize that fact. And once we realize that, definitely changes can no more affect. And why we don't realize that fact? Because we get associated with the time-bound Maya. And what is that? Time-bound Maya is body, mind and intellect. And because of that, these three things, body, mind and intellect, depends on time. They have the limitations, they have the time-bound constraints, but not the Parabrahman, Param, which is governing all these three. So when we realize it, we also become timeless. Thank you. Hari Om.
just realized that one of my glasses is coming off. Hopefully it will stay in place. Okay, I am Lata Munangi. I'll discuss about sloka number 21 and 22. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare shayanam. Iha samsare bahudustare. Kripaya pari pahi murare. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Again birth and again death. Punarapi jananam jatare shayanam. Again lying in the mother's womb. Imagine the baby sitting in the odd posture in the mother's womb for 9 months. Food is provided, but it's not of its choice. And it has to suffer the physical and mental strains and jerks of the mother. And I don't know how pleasing is the environment provided there. Isn't it just like a prison? If you were given a choice, would you want to go back and be in such kind of environment? Thank God we don't remember any of those experiences. But see, the cycle of birth and death for Jiva is never at rest. Death is just like a change of outfit. We take off our outfit when it is worn out and put on a new one. In the same way, the soul discards one physical form and takes another form which will be more suitable for it to express out its vasanas. At the moment of death, there is no extension of the individuality. But this ego just leaves its previous form, and according to its desires or vasanas that it has gathered, it tries to find a suitable physical equipment where it can express out itself completely and seek its fulfillment. However, in each lifetime, instead of getting rid of these vasanas, we, due to our ignorance and foolishness, create new set of desires. And again, this bag of unfulfilled desires prompt us to take another birth. So until and unless all these vasanas are washed out, we are just thrown into these cycles of birth and death. See, this world is in the state of flux. It's constantly changing. Change is the only thing that is permanent. See, there is change in every moment. There is like one moment dies, then there is birth of another moment. One thought dies, then there is birth of another thought. Just take the situations in life. The childhood dies and there is the birth of teenage. And at the end of teenage, there is birth of youth. When there is end of youth, there is the birth of old age. One thing that we have to observe is, when we are going from one change to another, like when we are moving forward, are we progressing any closer to achieving our goal? See, we are coming here daily to listen to this discourse, to understand the supreme reality, and to seek that permanent happiness. This could be because our desire to know that absolute truth. And the concepts also must be appealing to our intellect, or else we would not travel all the way here in this cold weather and sit here for 1.5 to 2 hours and listen to all these things. But the point is, if we cannot implement this in our actions, then what use is it just to have the mere intellectual appreciation? right? Don't we just not want to get out of this state and just want to live in all these delusions that we have been discussing? If the answer is yes, then God only must help us. And that is, iha samsare bahudushtare, kripaya pari pahi murare, which means that this samsara, ocean of worldly life, is very difficult to cross over. And please, O God, with your compassion, help me to cross over. See, to be able to come into this world in the human form is a very rare opportunity. And even if we have got the form, to have all the sense organs intact and to have a very good physical and mental personality, we must have done so many janmas of punya or devotion to get this kind of a life. And how blessed we must be to get this rare opportunity to study these scriptures and know about this absolute truth. What a waste or distraction would it be if we do not use this opportunity to reach our goal. And again, when this birth and death cycles repeating, as I said here, the next life you might not be a human life. This is the only chance, because you have your intelligence to use it in a wise way. So, God, when you have helped us so far to get to this state now, please help us to cross over this worldly life. And going to shloka number 22. Ratya charpata virachita kanta punya punya vivarjita panta yoga yogini yogi ramate balon mattava deva. See, we in our life spend most of the time in acquiring wealth or possessions or whatnot, thinking that there is happiness. See, if there was happiness in these materialistic things, when we gather more and more, our happiness must have been multiplying. So we should have been so much happier by now, right? Blessed are those who can adjust with whatever they have and focus on the main purpose of achieving that happiness or recognizing that happiness which is within. Because there is no happiness in the world of objects outside. The yogi whose mind is established in that Brahman, he knows his mission. What is his purpose in life? He is no more a slave to this body, no more bound by senses. So he does not depend much or demand much from this outside world for his basic necessities like food, shelter, or clothing. That is what is signifies in this first line, where Ratya Charpata Virachita Kanta, which means covering the body with a cloth that is made of pieces of cloth that is found on the street, which has been discarded by others. See, his aim in life is much higher than just, I don't know. So he doesn't care whatever is there. He's just happy with what he has, because his purpose is much higher. An individual who no more has ego or selfish desires and whose actions do not produce any new impressions, he alone can be happy. And he alone can revel in that higher state of consciousness. Because he is beyond merits and demerits, virtues and sins, good and bad. That is what it says when punya punya vivarjita pantha, because all these things are related to the body and mind, but not the soul. Because the soul is always in Satchitananda, but we cannot recognize it because of our ignorance. There is this example that we must have heard so many times about the mirror and the reflection, right? When I try to look into the mirror and try to find my reflection, if I'm not able to find my reflection, it is not because the mirror is not reflecting the object. It is because I'm not able to perceive that reflection because of the thick layer of dust that is there on the mirror. And when I start cleaning that dust, it is not the action of cleaning that is creating the image. It is just unveiling the image or the reflection which is already there. So similarly, it is because of this thick coating of vasanas on our mind, we are not able to perceive the divinity which is already there within us, which is ever present. Sin can only come when you are acting with ego, with the idea that I am doing it. So when this limited ego is replaced by that constant feeling of the Supreme, the actions performed by such an individual are just the Supreme expressing through himself. See, when this ego and the egocentric desires are eliminated, the work accomplished by such an individual is the divine work, and it cannot be classified as good or bad. It's papa or punya. That is what is this punya vajjita pantha. Yogi yoga niyoga gita chitta. What it means is whose mind is engaged in yoga. The mind is in common union with the eternal truth. The one whose mind is in complete balance, by practice, one who has gained complete control over the mind, where can his sense organs go searching in this outside world for pleasure when he has that complete bliss and ananda within himself? So such an individual is compared to a child or a madman. A child because of his innocence and full of bliss. See, the child doesn't carry any impressions from his past which he colors it the present. See, he just lives in the present moment. He does not have any manipulations. His actions are very pure. So is with the yogi. Both of the actions are very spontaneous actions. They're not planned. He is compared to a madman. In the sense, you cannot guess what is going on in a madman's mind. So is, and similarly, it is very strange for us to understand the inner experiences of the master, because he is in that very higher level that the normal do's and don'ts that apply to us here at this stage does not apply to him. So it's kind of difficult for us to understand him, in what state he is, what experiences he is going through. In that way, Adi Shankaracharya gives here the comparison of the yogi with a child and a madman.
good-looking audience. But I'm not really looking at you. Hari Om. My name is Ganesh Shanmugam, and I'm going to be speaking about shlokas 23 and 24. Thus far, we've seen the MO, the modus operandi of Adi Shankaracharya and his 14 followers to be described, in my opinion, can be described in one word, and that's bluntness. He's been very blunt throughout the entire text thus far, in all the previous shlokas and in the future ones as well, as we'll see. He basically doesn't sugarcoat anything. He tells things as it is. He refers to this poor old man as Muda, as fool, several times, and he may do it in the future too. We'll see. I don't want to ruin the suspense. This theme or this MO of bluntness continues in shlokas 23 and 24. Kastvam koham kuta ayatah Kame janani kome tatah Iti paribhavaya sarvamasaram Vishvam tyaktva svapna vicharam Kastvam koham, who are you, who am I? These are simple questions that we may expect from a 10-year-old boy, or someone who's just wondering about such things. He goes on to ask, where did I come from? What is this relationship with my mother? What is the relationship with my father? Kids that are younger than that don't care about such things. Ignorance is bliss, right? And kids that are older than that are more interested, especially in this country, about what car they're going to get from their parents when they turn 16 and how to impress members of the opposite sex with said car. But in the context of the text, these questions not represent only themselves, they represent other questions as well. So who are you? Who am I? What is my purpose in life? What happens to me after I die? All these are very important questions, but prior to answering these questions, we have to understand a few certain truths, and we have to have a firm grip on these truths. Iti paribhavaya sarvamasaram vishvam tyaktva svapna vicharam. So we know that svapna means dream, and vishvam, crudely translated into English, means the world of experiences. So, as we all know, when you have a dream and you wake up, what you dreamt about was not real. Little children don't always have this sense of this don't have a firm grip on this concept. There's a story of a young boy. For simplicity's sake, we'll call him Samir. So one night, Samir fell asleep, and he had a dream. And he dreamt he could fly. So in his dream, he flew all around, said hi to all his friends. He flew to India and visited his grandparents in Karnataka, purely a coincidence. And then he flew back at the end of the night before he had to wake up in his room. And he woke up from his dream. But Samir wasn't sure. He thought that he could fly because, he was still a young kid. So he decided to see if he could still fly. So he lived on the second story of his house. And he went to the window, opened the window, got on the windowsill, and jumped. And flew straight into the ground and broke several bones. So Samir didn't have that that realization. Samir being the boy in the story, not representing anybody in real life. And didn't have this realization that what he dreamt about was not real. In that same way, the world that we live in is just a dreamland, and not in any sort of positive way. Simply a world of illusions, a world of objects, and this is something that we must realize. We have several experiences every day, as we know, from getting up and brushing our teeth to closing the deal, and as many of you know, I'm a doctor, to seeing patients. And with each one of these experiences, we attach a value. This value is attached rather arbitrarily. And as we attach a value to these experiences and these things, we become attached to them. And so this attachment keeps us in this figurative hell. Other religions have their own hell, depicted by devils and fire and things like that. This is our own form of hell, a hell brought on by the world of attachment, the world of illusions, this dreamland that we live in. And we have to realize this if we are going to ever disattach ourselves from it. We must realize that these attachments are what are binding us. Unfortunately, nobody else can realize this for us. We have to do this on our own. It'd be nice to just, like you go to yoga class or something like that. It'd be nice to just go to class and then, or some other training class, or computer training class, and when you're done, that's it. But this is something that we must strive for every day and learn for ourselves. And we must awaken to this reality. And there's a famous quote that I think we all know from Swami Vivekananda, and you can quote with me: "Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached." I have my own little story about that quote. Samir knows, the real Samir, not the earlier Samir in the story. Samir knows, my mom is a big fan of various phrases and quotations and puts them up in our house all over the place. And so when I was growing up, I grew up in College Station, Texas, about 3 hours from here. When I was growing up, my mother put this quote at the foot of my bed. But she put it on a hot pink glaring poster in these very ugly purple letters. And she had this quote spelled out at the foot of the bed. So on certain mornings, especially Saturday mornings when I wanted to sleep in a little bit, my parents would come in and wake me up, and I would just do that thing where I just kind of open one eye a little bit. And the first thing I would see were these glaring purple letters on the pink background. And so even if I wanted to go back to sleep and close my eyes, it was burned into my head. And I had no choice but to arise and awake and stop not till the goal is reached. So how do we do this? How do we start to attach ourselves from this world? And as some of my colleagues have spoke about this earlier, it's through constant contemplation of the supreme reality of God Himself. We're going to look at 24. Dvaimai chanya traiko Vishnu. Vyartam kupyasi maya sahishnuhu. Bhava samachittaha sarvatratvam. Vanchasya chiradyadi vishnutvam. Tvai means in you, and Mai is in me. Tvai Mai Chanya Traiko Vishnuhu. This is basically the first message of this shloka. There's two main messages of this shloka, and that is that God is everywhere, in you, in me. It's a very simple thing. Like I said, he's very blunt. We find a way in our interactions with other people through our own prejudices and tendencies to categorize people, to put them in these arbitrary categories, instead of seeing the humanness, the humanity in all of us. These categories include things like gender, race, religion, nationality. As you know, I grew up in College Station, home of Texas A&M University, and that's our main rival is the University of Texas at Austin. So those are the two major institutions in Texas, for those that don't know, and I'm sure all of you know. And on the day after Thanksgiving every year, they play a football game, not football with your foot, but American football. And in the week leading up to that game, people who are affiliated with both of these universities pretty much refuse to deal with each other. And then the losing team will refuse to deal with the winning team acquaintances for the next several weeks or so. And this rivalry doesn't spare anything, doesn't spare family lines. Even if your neighbors or colleagues are involved, people still find a way to avoid the other person or talk trash or whatever. And the interesting thing is, though, as Swamiji was telling us, if you put these two same people who may be bitter rivals or see themselves as different people, if you put them in a completely separate situation where they would have to work together, what if you put them in the middle of the Sahara Desert or something and told them they had to get out by themselves? Do you think that one would care that one went to the University of Texas and the other one went to the Texas A&M? No. Of course not. They would see the humanity in each other. So, but beyond humanity is this concept of divinity, that is God in all people, because God is everywhere. Tvai mai, in you and in me. The second main message from the shloka comes from the third line, Bhava samachittaha sarvatratvam. And that is to learn to maintain your equanimity in all situations. This is regardless of whatever surroundings you're in. Not to get too high and not to get too low. And this comes from the concept of unattaching yourself to this world of illusions that we live in. And again, this is your choice and something that you can do on your own. Vanchas yachirad yadi vishnutvam. Focus all your day-to-day activities on the ultimate goal. If you want to attain this status of the supreme reality, you shouldn't forget your day-to-day duties. That's the main goal. The example that Swamiji gave us in class was taking a long trip to New York, not by plane, that takes like 3 hours, but driving it. While you're driving, you shouldn't forget things like going to the bathroom, eating, taking, resting, and that sort of thing. As most of you know, I'm a doctor, but you don't have to be a doctor to know what would happen to you if you didn't go to the bathroom or didn't eat for 3 days. So it's important to do your daily duties while you're in search of the Supreme Self, of the Supreme Reality. And for further details on how to do this, please stay tuned for the next shlokas and for the next episode. Hari Om. Can we ask the audience? No audience lifeline.
as you, I can give back you the same example which you give us. Things have to be done with the idea that you're doing with happiness, not for happiness again. Now, when you're doing the thing and you're not feeling happy, then you're doing something wrong. And if you're doing a thing and if you're trying to learn a subject and you're seeing that you're not able to solve problems, that means you're not learning the subject properly. So the whole idea is like slowly with this discipline, I think we'll understand more, and I think it'll only make us more with clarity. And if the end aim is to be happy, we'll begin to feel more happy along with. It's like if you're dropping your worries, if your aim is to drop the worries which you are having right now, and if it is not dropping, then we are not doing it right. I think it's to start. I think it's only you have to make suitable things which is suited to your personality. If you at this point of time, if you cannot do meditation in the morning, do it in the night. The aim is to do meditation, right?
Text is talking, I'm not talking. I'm talking Bhaja Govindam, and Bhaja Govindam is talking. Yeah, please.
Siddha Purushas seem to do the same kind of things that you and I do.
Yes.
And they also seem to enjoy things that they're doing.
Right.
So what is the difference between a Siddha Purusha and us all?
The way I see it is they definitely do the same thing that we all do, but it's the way they do it, the attitude towards the things that they do. When we all interact with the world outside, well, it's a fact. We all have a hidden agenda behind whatever we do, though with interacting the people. Well, it has become, I don't know, it's the way we are born or it's so strong the Maya is, whatever, but the end result is we have become result oriented, whatever interaction we deal with. So, and therefore, well, as you cannot get the outcome as you want, as the world is not perfect, and you're bound to be sorrowful. And the difference, the way the Siddha Purusha do the things is, first thing, no expectations. Their attitude towards the things are different. They are not expecting anything in return. There is no hidden agenda behind their actions. I think that's the difference.
Again, you can ask this at home. Is it your way of looking at them, or it gives me clarity, like not to expect much, whatever I do, and that's it. Cannot change this word. Have to accept it. I cannot change this world. I have to accept what is.
There are many religions that do not believe in dreams.
Okay.
Christianity doesn't believe in it. The Islam religion doesn't believe in it.
Mhm.
But seems like it has been often repeated in the Hindu scriptures that there is something called life after death, there is rebirth. Is it just a concept or is there any reality to it?
Um, I think it is an assumption, but then again, you can say that there is a reality to it also. Because you see, all of us are the same supreme expressing. But why is it expressing in so many different forms? It could be just, all of us could be just unique, the same, right? Why every person is different from others? Why am I different from Ajay or Rahul? See, our thought process or our actions or our clarity, everything is different. Why is it different? It could be because of the impressions from the previous birth that we are carrying.
Would it not be genetics?
If it was genetics, then we see that twins born for the same parents, they have so many different qualities.
Did I mention this was a good-looking audience? I was just going to point out that maybe the genetics are influenced by something too. And there's always a component of faith. When you're trying to explain the cycle of death and rebirth. Just to add to her fantastic answer.
Now that you have the mic, in your sloka you were talking about the dream experience. You realize that it is a dream once you have woken up to the waking plane. That is when you realize it as a dream. And now the simile or the similarity given was that this is like a dream. But you will only know that only if you have awakened. How do you expect it to do it while you are still in the waking plane?
While you're still in the dream,
Yeah, this dream is the waking plane. So when you awaken from this waking plane, that is when you know that that was a dream like. But being in it, how do you visualize it? How do you understand it?
I guess, none of us have seen this awakened state yet, obviously. That's why we're still here in this dream world. So we're constantly striving to get there by concentrating on the Supreme in our day-to-day activities, by performing bhakti yoga, by performing all the other yogas. And at some point, as you go through this birth and rebirth, this death and rebirth cycle, our goal is to ultimately reach that point of supreme awakening that you're referring to, but we haven't seen it. We're trying to get there.
No, not fetching, just some simple talk. I've been talking about Swamiji, about this movie called The Secret many a times now. But in this movie, we see that they say that in this world, all these big people, all these great people who did big things in this world, didn't know how they would achieve what they are going to achieve. But they just knew that they're going to do something big in this world in some aim, but they didn't know how they'll, the person who found penicillin or something didn't know how he's going to find penicillin. But he had his aim on that, and finally the world conspired, whatever, made its way to reach it. If we just look at previous experiences, I think there is a bit of faith in that when you're trying to look at someone else's example. It's a little bit of faith saying that, okay, if you follow this path, maybe you will reach there. And there's this nice example when you're going to, say, from here to driving to New York and it's all dark, assume it's all dark. So you just need 200 feet ahead that your lights are on, and you just keep going, and you'll reach New York. Yeah, you have the map, you just keep looking the exit signs and you'll reach. So it's a little bit of faith on the map which you have, and I think you'll be there.
The first question that was asked was about the means and the end, and the means becoming rigid and the discipline. First of all, if we are clear of the end, the goal, the means doesn't become rigid. The means or the discipline doesn't become an overwhelming experience. Because of that clarity, the means becomes an easy way to work with. I'm sure those of you who have lived in this country or who have gotten educated in this country, in those earlier phases wherein you used to receive your initial pay by your work or assistantship that was given to you, how much was it? Okay, she has a perfect answer. She says it was $387. And in that $387, it is hard to believe. There are people I see in UTD, especially the Chinese who are doing their masters or PhD, they have their wives and kids, and in that 380 plus, they are able to manage. Because their focus is not in today's luxurious life. It's a means so that they can achieve something, that they can better this particular situation. So the present means doesn't become, though very hard, doesn't seem to be hard because you have the clarity to reach that goal. And if it appears to be rigid, it is because we do not have that clarity on that goal. And the moment we lose sight of that clarity, everything becomes or seems hard, difficult. The second question that I had asked about the rebirth, whether it is a vague concept just to prove a point, or does it have anything in it at all? I thought she was pretty much onto the dot in her answer, but adding few more words to it is like, as Jayavarat said, the moment I asked this question, that there is a reality to this concept of rebirth, that nobody of us can ever really say it, because none of us remembers it. And supposing I come back after my death saying, yeah, you all, there is something called after death, then don't get scared. Apart from that, I know we are scared, or you are scared with the presence itself, with the absence itself. Forget after death, you would be definitely scared to death. In getting into the basics of it, when a child is born, let's take the example of twins, though born of the same gene pool, it is quite possible that they have the same genetics. But still, their likes, their dislikes, their wants, their needs, everything seems to differ, seems to change. And that concept is taken by the rishis, saying that these are the imprints, tendencies, must have been from the earlier past. The earlier past now starts unfolding in this life as various experiences. And the logic given is the cause and effect theory, that whatever is here is an incident. That you all sitting here, they all speaking here is not an accident. There was an announcement, though it was announced in 4 different sessions to the whole congregation of Chinmaya Mission. Still, there are, I think, 20 or 25 of us planned to be here. So it was an incident for each one of us sitting here. It could not be an accident. There was a preparation, there was a plan. But the only difference is we know that we had planned for it. And for those which we do not know, we attribute it to an accident. But just because it is in the realm of our ignorance, we cannot call it an accident. There must have been a reason. And that reason is called our earlier tendencies. Those are the vasanas, proving that there should have been a birth earlier to this. And almost Hinduism, most of these scriptures talk of it. And surprisingly, even in the Old Testament, how do you pronounce this? Psalm? Psalms. There is the Old Testament in the Psalms, you find this particular statement that to have a strong body and a sound mind is a result of your past life. He doesn't say past life, he says past. And that is deleted from the New Testament. So probably there is that theory or concept of rebirth even in other religions, but not dwelt upon. Now talking about the third question. What was the third question? He answered it well. Only one word that I would add is the difference between the masters and us all is they are in the present moment, not as the present, but as the presence. We are dragged either into the future with our anxieties or into our past because of our nostalgic habit, or with our disturbances, we disturb the present moment. We are not even in the present, we cannot even fathom about being in presence. But whereas for them, they are in the present moment as the presence. That is the striking difference between a master and others, the wise and the otherwise. And what the fourth question was? The dream. Yes, Ajay put it very beautifully. That is one thing which is not a part of our experience. So that which is not a part of our experience, we take into confidence, we trust the statement of those whom we look up to,
hear the scriptures and the master's statement, and with their experiences being the proof, we end up being the proof to that scriptures which guide us through the path. So though there is darkness around, you will arrive New York. Keep focusing on the 200 yards in front of you with a light that you can dispel the darkness in front of you, and keep moving forward. Aega. Aane wala aega. So you will reach there. A nice job done. Give them a big hand. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Just as an announcement, tomorrow will be the last day. We'll have Yajna Prasada and Guru Dakshina program for their great effort. And at the end of it, I'll be summarizing this Bhaja Govindam, and also to all these speakers, some tips that I have observed, some shoulds and should nots from my side, and probably will help you later. So, and after that, after the Guru Dakshina program is done, we'll have a very good Bhiksha, Prasada, a dinner Bhiksha here for all of us here. So come with a good appetite. And just to tell you, I'll be cooking for all of you. Hari Om.